Watchers in the Fourth Dimension.
Where are you going?
To kill Davros. I'm not here as your prisoner, Davros, but your executioner.
A lot of good people have died today. I'm sick of it.
Hello and welcome back to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Diana.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Riley, and when it is time to die, you will, in your agony, beg to pay homage to the Daleks.
This episode is the long-awaited return of the Daleks as the Fifth Doctor faces off against fake police officers and soldiers, Dalek troopers, a ruthless mercenary, and Davros himself in Resurrection of the Daleks. But before we get into that, Julie's going to take a quick look at the mail. Over to you, Julie.
All right, everyone. I will try to get through this as quickly as possible, but I have been given the 5 doctors, so we'll see how that goes. First piece of mail from Alan Seiler says, "No way for me to express in words how much joy it brings me to hear you all enjoy a Davidson story this much." Okay, it's a doctor story, not a Davidson story. But I digress. I love the 5 Doctors so much, not least because it was the very first Doctor Who story I ever saw, and it's not hyperbole to say that it literally changed my life. I was one of those upstart Americans who saw it on the 23rd of November, 1983, as God intended, unlike the poor British sods who saw it 2 days later because the BBC were doing the devil's bidding.
You bastard.
For many years, this story was my only exposure for the first 3 Doctors. It was a few years before my PBS station picked up the Pertwee episodes, and then a year or so later for black and white episodes. So Richard Hurndall was indeed, at least for me, the original, you might say. This is some of the best dialogue ever written in the history of the show, especially the banter that Uncle Terrence wrote for Troughton and Courtney. I give this one 10 Dalek mutants and death throes out of 10, but I'm ranking how important this story is to me. It gets 100 out of 10.
Whoa.
Ooh.
He's really raised the bar there.
Yeah.
From Brian Moreau, this episode was my first ever Doctor that wasn't Tom Baker. I didn't know where Adric and Nyssa were. I didn't know Turlo was a companion. I thought he was just a bystander swept into the world of the Doctors. He was an audience surrogate. I guess that's a deep thought for a 12-year-old. I also didn't know that Sarah had her own K9. I thought it was just something Specials did, mix everything together. I didn't know what canon was. I was disappointed there was hardly any 4th Doctor. I had no idea about Shouty, and I did love it and thought it was awesome. But there's no metric or rating. Rate your stories.
You annoyed Julie.
Yes, just slightly annoyed. Dan Boris says, "I loved this episode when I first saw it and just rewatched, and it's still as good as I remembered it being. It is given the challenging task of paying tribute to 20 years of the show and balancing a lot of characters, and it does an admirable job. My only disappointment was not actually having the 4th Doctor. I would have loved to see if Tom's Doctor would have interacted with the others. I give it 9.5 stars of Rassilon, trademarked, out of 10. David Gorton says, "This is very much a triumph of nostalgia over plot since the emphasis is very much on the former, although, as it's been said elsewhere, it's disappointing that we don't get more interactions between the Doctors until later scenes. Can't argue with Paul Jericho's strange delivery of his lines as the Castellan back in the 80s and 90s. No, not the mind probe, became something of a catchphrase.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how I feel about Barusa being revealed as the main villain. It would have certainly been out of character for any of the previous iterations to have done something like this, but I suppose personalities do change from regeneration to regeneration. Overall, this is a 10 out of 10 for nostalgia, but 6 out of 10 for everything else, so by that I have to give this 8 implausible things of Rassilon out of 10. Kieran James Evans says, "Kinda 2 scores for this one." That seems to be a little bit of a theme, I suppose. Plot story-wise, it's not particularly special, but it's well made given the shopping list of stuff to include, so it's 7 items on the shopping list of Rassilon out of 10. Nostalgia-wise, yeah, it's 10 gruesome Cybermen deaths out of 10. The Cyberman massacre sequence was actually directed by J&T himself.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
That's really fun. Guy Lambert simply says, "Here we go. If you hate it, we will never speak again."
Fair enough.
Well, we didn't. So I guess we get a reprieve.
And then our friend Citrine Dragonfly says, "Thanks for a great episode. You all had me cackling like a crazy person while out walking my dog. I often do that when I walk my dog too. I love fan service done right, and that is what this episode is. It's sort of a shame this is one of Davidson's best performances, though, because, in my opinion, Davidson at his best doesn't come close to touching an average Pertwee or even a below-average Troughton. On that note, I'll confess that during my first watch of Classic Who, I survived the early 80s seasons by counting down until I see Troughton again. It sounds like maybe Julie is using a similar strategy.
I think she might be, yes.
You know, it happens. Also, because she had dual things on different platforms, maybe her rating is on her Instagram. Plaid Brarian says, "The Five Doctors makes me want to stand outside like Andrew Lincoln in Love Actually with a sign that says, 'To me, you are perfect.' Just, less creepy." It was maybe the second or third complete episode I ever saw, the one that made me fully understand the concept of the show, especially how all these guys were actually just one guy, and the one that made me a fan for life. It's the perfect sampler plate for Classic Who, and there's so much to love about it. Davidson and his crew having fun and being funny, for once. Troughton and the Briggs double act, not Hartnell eating pineapple like a raccoon. The Master's inability to understand why none of the doctors can take his offers of assistance at face value. Bruce is not playing with his dolls again, like Dark Helmet and Spaceballs. The Mind Probe, and of course, all the things of Rassilon. I've watched this one more times than any other, and it's always my go-to answer when friends ask where they should start with the original series. 10 twinges of cosmic angst out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to try my best to read this one. Fishmonger, you put me through my paces here. The Five Doctors. Where do I start? I guess I should start with some nostalgia. My first real memory of watching The Five Doctors was when I'd attended a live Riff Tracks performance where they covered it, with the joke that sticks in my head being, that wasn't my mind. Personally, I love that the Who universe is a world wherein the robots either aim for the dick or shoot from the dick. No in-betweens. And that includes the Cybermen hip-firing their blasters like they're in Grand Theft Auto. Get used to that. They don't stop doing it. Now, for all my nostalgia, I do have some nitpicks, and the main one being, why is Sarah Jane here? But no, seriously, why? Why'd the triangles bring her? Why'd anyone bring her? Why is she here? Why is it? Speaking of trash, yes, as a matter of fact, 3 did leave Bessie in the death zone. Attach this message. It's an excerpt from a Big Finish and Time at the Office, so we got a little bit of that going on. I'm going to paraphrase here. Yeah, they just seem to leave their stuff lying around. It also reveals some rather amazing news for Riley and some not so amazing news for Diana. So, sorry, everything's being left everywhere. As well as completely screwing up the Whoniverse power scaling. Overall, I'm not going to be the Riley in the mailroom, despite the walking nitpick that is the most overrated companion being present. I will give this story 10 out of 10 creepy wax Tom Bakers. And then, last but not least, and this is going to be rather decisive, and Bureau Beatnik, I can't believe you've done this. Thanks for a highly entertaining episode, watchers. As for the story itself, though, not great. Second Doctor in the Brig and Bruce playing with his toys are the highlight for me. The rest of the story bores me, especially the Fifth Doctor. 5 out of 10 pocket fireworks.
Ooh.
Wow.
I'm going to move over to one last little bit of mail, and it's on Wurzel Gummidge, and I hope, Beardo, that this time, maybe you had a little bit more fun, at least. Beardo says, I am left in such a bewildered state. On one hand, I feel Riley's passion and zeal for this awful abomination. On the other, I feel Anthony's pain. I, too, think I blacked out in the Christmas special. Where did the bird in his chest go? Why did he switch heads then to cut to his normal head in the next scene? Why does he chase after ladies that rightfully want nothing to do with him? How did that Bobby survive a cannonball to the face? Why is that Pertwee's face? Why was Diana so forgiving and lenient? Why did Julie do this to us? I revised my count, plus 75 to the Gurn count.
Yeah, I've frequently been asking that question ever since we did it, Julie. Why did you do this to us?
Because you locked me in a basement. That is why. To quote Anthony, please make it stop. We'll watch again next Christmas.
There you go. There you go.
Beardo is officially an extreme masochist.
He also says that scarecrow ball is the stuff of nightmares, and yes, it was in my nightmares last night. 8 sacks and taints out of 10.
Oh, God.
And then Delilah. I didn't think it was that bad. Would I watch it again or seek out any of the other episodes? Probably not, but it was an interesting glimpse at a different role for Pertwee. The Christmas special was a little hard to get through, though, and that was mostly due to the songs, though I did enjoy Saucy Nancy's number and the final song about a cup of tea and a slice of cake. I loved the songs, so I'm sorry, Delilah. I might disagree with you. That made it bearable for me. Donovan and I actually had a cup of tea and slice of cake, actually cupcakes, while listening to this episode. Did anyone else think the actor playing the Crowman was channeling William Hartnell? Maybe, maybe not. And the head switching made me think of the princess from Return to Oz, though slightly less creepy. For the overall experience, I would give it 5 out of 10 fancy party heads. And that, my friends, is the mail.
Thank you, Julie. And as a reminder to everyone, we really do love getting your feedback, thoughts, comments, and questions. And as you've just heard, we do try to read out as many as possible on the show. So please do get in touch with us. You can contact us through Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, or you can email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. You can also interact with all 4 of us on our Discord server, and there's an invite link to that in the show blurb. Additionally, we would absolutely love it if you subscribe to the podcast, if you're not doing so already, and if you dropped us a review or rating on your podcast platform of choice. Anyway, heading behind the scenes on Resurrection of the Daleks. Let's set the scene. The Daleks, everyone's favourite pepper pots, had been a staple of Doctor Who throughout the 1960s and early 70s. But after season 17's Destiny of the Daleks, they vanished from our screens. Let's fast forward to 1982. Producer John Nathan Turner and script editor Eric Saywood felt that the time was right for a comeback. But there was a catch. Dalek creator Terry Nation was now living in Hollywood, and his approval was essential for any new Dalek story. Now, as we know from previous rodeos, the BBC had a rule. Script editors weren't supposed to write for their own shows. But with Nation unlikely to pen a script himself given his distance, Saywood was tapped to write the new Dalek adventure, provided the BBC gave special permission. Meanwhile, Nathan Turner reached out to Nation's agent, Roger Hancock, hoping for the green light to use the Daleks. Instead, he got a firm no. Nation, protective of his creations after past disappointments, insisted no one else could write for the Daleks. And for a while, it looked like the Daleks' return was off the table. But fate intervened at a Doctor Who convention in Chicago, and it was Terry Nation's first ever fan event, and he was absolutely blown away by the audience's passion for the Daleks. Energized by the fans, Nation finally gave his blessing for Saywood to proceed. And Saywood, fresh off of his success with the Cybermen in Earthshock, wanted this Dalek story, initially titled The Return and later Warhead, to be just as action-packed. He decided Davros, the Daleks' creator, had to be included to spice up the dialogue, and he introduced a new anti-hero, Lytton, hoping the character might become a recurring favourite. Nathan Turner also asked Saywood to tie up loose ends from Destiny of the Daleks, including Davros' imprisonment and the ongoing war with the Movellans. The script was sent to Nation in October 1982, but weeks passed with no response. With production looming, Nathan Turner and Saywood gambled and kept the Daleks story on the schedule. When Nation finally replied, he was mostly pleased but wanted the Daleks to be more formidable, vetoed Davros' death, and requested that the Dalek Emperor be replaced by the Supreme Dalek. Saywood made the changes, but he felt that the script was at this point a little overstuffed. And production was set to go, with Peter Grimwade down to direct. But then, disaster struck. A BBC electrician strike threw the schedule into chaos, and The Return lost its studio slots. Location filming was cancelled, and the story was officially dropped from season 20. To make matters worse, a miscommunication about a crew lunch led to tension between Nathan Turner and Grimwade, straining relationships behind the scenes.
That must have been one hell of a lunch.
Apparently what happened was it was a commiseration lunch, and Nathan Turner wasn't invited because Grimwade was going to take him out one-on-one for dinner, but no one told Nathan Turner that, and so JNT got his panties in a bunch over not being invited out, basically. Anyway, the Daleks weren't gone for long. When work began on season 21, the team decided to revive the story, giving Saywood a chance to tighten the script. The adventure was renamed to Resurrection of the Daleks, and this time, Matthew Robinson, new to Doctor Who, took the director's chair. Joining his behind-the-scenes core team, we have several other newcomers, including production manager Corin Hollingworth, designer John Anderson, and costume designer Janet Tharby. And as composer, we have a returning face with Malcolm Clarke coming back for the 4th time. Robinson had to recast Davros, as original actor Michael Wisher, despite being interested in returning, was unavailable due to other commitments. Robinson ultimately chose Terry Malloy to become the 3rd Davros, and he brought a new intensity to the role. Malloy studied Wisher's approach to Davros in Genesis of the Daleks to ensure a level of consistency. The mask originally worn by Wisher and adapted for Goodison, the previous Davros, was too large for Malloy, and so a new mask was created using a cast of the new actor's head. On top of that, regular Dalek voice actor Royce Skelton was unavailable, and so Royce Mills and Brian Miller stepped in. Brian Miller was, of course, Elizabeth Sladen's husband. The Dalek props themselves were a patchwork of parts from previous decades, truly a testament to the show's resourcefulness. And yes, goon Daleks were used once again because those Daleks just love gooning. Nathan Turner, always eager to reward longtime fans, included a flashback sequence during a Dalek mind probe scene, although a clip of Leela was accidentally left out in editing. Sorry, Riley. Broadcast plans for this story had to shift due to the broadcast of the 1984 Winter Olympics, so Resurrection of the Daleks became a test case for a new 45-minute episode format, airing as 2 double-length episodes. The experiment was considered a ratings success and paved the way for changes in the following season. And the final version of the serial was broadcast on 2 consecutive Wednesdays, the 4th and 11th of February. And with that, we're going to head into our short summary, which is with Riley this episode. Take it away, Riley.
The serial begins with a depiction of what would happen if you replace British police with American police, as the serial shows that the body count for this one is going to be high. The police are after 2 men, Galloway and Stein, who are duplicate humans made by the Daleks. That's right. Somehow, the Daleks have returned. Meanwhile, we learn the person leading the police, Lytton, is working for the Daleks, which gets him an adorable little Dalek-styled helmet, which makes it look like he has a cock coming out of his forehead. In case you didn't feel like there was enough groups to keep up with, we have a crew of a prison ship which for some reason has Davros and has decided to store him in the frozen food section instead of killing him. Lytton and the Daleks want to free Davros because the Daleks got their asses whooped by the Movellans, who used a virus to defeat them. And of course, Davros has his own plans to survive so that he can continue finishing scenes by saying sentences with an ever-increasing volume and intensity. So, it is up to the Doctor and the TARDIS crew to stop the Daleks and Davros. They do it by getting Stein to break his Dalek conditioning. Yep, that's right, Stein is a Dalek agent, even though Lytton and the Daleks were hunting him down in part 1. Doctor decides it is time to pop a cap in Davros' ass for once and for all, but he is thwarted because Stein's conditioning kicks back on once again. Convenient, isn't it? This leads us to an eventual confrontation that was brewing between Davros and the Daleks, as they both share pieces of a broken heart necklace with the inscription, "Best Frenemies Forever." We fast forward to Davros' Daleks and the Daleks' Daleks that get into a fight on Earth in a warehouse where the Doctor uses the Movillan virus to kill them, and Stein flips again and blows up the Dalek ship, supposedly killing Davros. Yeah, right. The Movillan virus is ingenious in that it forces the Daleks to continually come until they die of exhaustion and dehydration. So in the aftermath, while seeing a warehouse floor filled with the bodies of Daleks who went out on a high note, Tegan realizes that this is too fucked up and says peace out. The end.
All right. Well, that was pretty comprehensive, Riley. So let's get into it with part 1.
Yeah, I don't have much to say, right? We're good?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and rate it and do our metrics and, we can be done with it, right?
Well, let's start off with the fact that something I brought up in the short summary, which is, why are they chasing after Galloway and Stein? I guess Stein and Galloway are constantly flipping whether they're under control of the Daleks or not.
So my thinking is, Galloway was never under the control of the Daleks, and Stein was. So I think Stein was the mole in that group that breaks out right at the beginning.
Oh, that gets all shot. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why they're being chased.
Yeah. What I didn't particularly like, and I'm glad it didn't stick around for too long, was the shaky camera. I'm used to that kind of camera work when it's truly perspective shots and things of individuals, and it just wasn't very clear that that was what was happening, if that was what was happening. And I just thought that it was rather shaky there at the beginning. And I think there was another instance where it was kind of shaky. And I was like, please don't do this. And they didn't. And I was happy.
I think it's a pretty cool opening, right? We're in London. We're in a very run-down area of London. One that, by the way, now has been radically regenerated, and that was starting to be on the docket at the time this story was being recorded. And we suddenly have these men in futuristic clothing bursting out of a door, absolutely terrified and confused, as what appear to be Metropolitan police officers gun them down. That's a fucking brutal opening, and I'm here for it.
Well, it's also like I was saying earlier, there's a high body count in this one. A lot of death in this one, and I guess that's on point because that's what Tegan points out at the very, very end of the serial.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that because I think that says something really, really interesting about this story. But I want to save that for the end.
Well, we can also discuss now that Lytton is unable to find Stein, he gets away, he then goes up to the ship, and then we have that sudden shift from current day London to being up in a ship, and you don't know who these people are. You just know that they really like very silly hats with all bills and no caps. And I was thinking that design must have been very annoying for the actors because the very tip of it is 3 inches away from their eye line.
When I was 7 years old, I thought those hats were the coolest thing ever. As an adult, I can see how they're highly impractical and question 7-year-old Anthony's sartorial tastes.
And the prison ship, they also have interesting hats as well, but they're more like oversized fry cook hats. Like, that's what they look like over there. So
they're sort of beret style.
Yeah.
Like military beret, or as we'd say back home, beret. I've lived here too long.
I like a lot of the setup. For me, I think a lot of things that happen with this is I like so many components, and yet I can't quite put my finger on it, but something's just not connecting for me.
I kind of agree with you where if I look at everything individually, I love all of it. But, and I think we've already touched on it a little bit, there's so much going on just in these first even couple of minutes. Because I also noted the shaky cam, and I like a good use of a handheld camera. But if they were trying to instill the sense of confusion, they didn't need to do that because they got it square on with the editing. Because they jumped from ship to ship. I couldn't quite discern who was on what ship, who was on what team. It was helpful that the prison ship somehow seemed to be one white lady and a bunch of actors that were not white, which was incredibly helpful and beautiful to see, except they all died. And that was sad.
To be fair, though, it's not just all the actors of color die. It's basically everyone except our cast and Lytton.
For sure. No, everybody died.
Part of the confusion comes from, I just tack on there for you, Diana, part of the confusion comes is that our opening scene are people escaping from police, and then we find out there's 2 ships up there. One of them is a prison ship, but those people that escape are not escape from the prison ship, they escape from the other ship. But when you think of a prison ship, that's what people would normally escape from.
Yeah, but there's only one prisoner on the prisoner ship, and it's our boy Davros, still frozen following the events of Destiny of the Daleks. That is what we're protecting.
Yeah, Diana, I think that's kind of where I got to. I feel like this needed 1 or 2 more edits. And I understand that in part 1, I could understand keeping it a little bit disconnected so that it's a bit of a question, right? What exactly is going on? It's a mystery. What's actually truly happening? But at no point do they really try to tell you what's going on. I don't know that they did such a good job there.
And it's got to be tough trying to introduce 3 key locations and the people associated with that location. Because I kept thinking, I don't need to know that the doctor on the prison ship is a bit of a bitch. All of the pre-setup for all of this stuff, you just need to go to the flight deck. And they're in a panic. We can understand that Davros was there through conversation. They built up so much of these scenes, and I did appreciate the scenes themselves. It's like I said, the components are good, but I felt through both parts of this story that it's very clear they're unused to working on a 45-minute story.
Yeah, well, and this one wasn't scripted as 45 minutes. This was 4 24-ish minute episodes that they then had to smash 2 and 2 together to deal with the scheduling. So, Diana, that point's valid, and it's because it wasn't written that way.
But I will say something that came in, I think, in Riley, in your short summary. The witty dialogue is fabulous. Did you say that? I feel like you said
No.
it. No. Cool, I'm going crazy. I love that.
I'll take credit for it, though. I'll take credit for it. That's fine.
I'm going insane. There's just that moment when they're talking about this, and I think Galloway turns to Stein and he's like, "You're pathetic." And then Stein's like, "That too." I was just like, that was beautiful. And there are little moments like that, and you can kind of tell like the inspiration and how the story and who got involved. And I just wish everything gelled for me, but it just didn't quite do it.
There's an example of that good dialogue that came in part 1 early on was when they first land our TARDIS crew in that area of London, which is, I guess, is like a riverfront warehouse area. The doctor is just doing the doctor thing, like, look at this. Oh, it's so amazing. Look at this. Oh, look at this and this. And then he gets upset at Tegan for not appreciating it. And then she had a very good comeback to him about, like, I'm sorry, I can't appreciate the crumbling brickwork or something to that effect. And I thought that was very good, because it's time for a little sass to be returned. And it feels like it's been way overdue.
Right? They can disagree with each other and it still be funny. It doesn't have to be, shut the fuck up, you're dumb.
Yeah, exactly.
And can we talk about the really decent dramatic opening for the Daleks, doing that Darth Vader kind of opening of blowing it open? My only problem with it is the mines or the explosives they set up to destroy those first 2 Daleks, that caused them to retreat. What a bunch of wimps. I thought these were the fucking Daleks. Man, they'd be like, let's just keep on going, you know? Like, but all of a sudden they're like, retreat, meh. I felt a little bit against character to me.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It really kind of was. The Daleks at this point, they've been stretched thin and they're across the universe, right? Because this whole issue with this disease thing. So they're probably playing it safe because they're probably low on numbers. But we don't know that right now. That hasn't been a reminder to us.
It's definitely interesting, Julie, because to your point, this is not how we've seen the Daleks operate before. They've got humans that are working for them, and admittedly we find out that later most of them are duplicates, but that's something new for them. So the implication, to your point, is they have not done well in this war with the Movellans. Not at all.
And I actually thought it was interesting that they did do the retreat, because I think that leads into, with the rest of the story, this set of Daleks are, I think at least, far more actually strategic than Daleks usually are.
Mm-hmm.
Because Daleks are like, exterminate. And this time they're aware that if one group can create a virus to destroy them, that has to be sitting in the back of their minds, beings. I don't know what they have. And knowing that they need to be better prepared for what they're coming up against, I do think is a step in a better direction for Daleks, in my personal opinion.
That helps my headcanon with them, because over time on the show, and I'm only looking at from what we've seen so far, I'm not taking in consideration of what I have seen on the new show. Only taking what has been given to me from our chronological viewing. It's not this serial. It happened a way back. But the Daleks just have lost all sense of intimidation at all. I mean, they're, to me, to a point, almost being a humorous character. And it's sad because that's not what they're supposed to be. But they sound funny. They look kind of cute and act funny. It's kind of strips them of what their real purpose is. Like I said, they've lost all form of being intimidating. But if we put our head around it and say this is why they're acting the way they are and they're not as awesome, then that would make sense, is that they are been dwindled down. So I hope that, I mean, I'll go with that as my headcanon for it, but like I said, they just are losing that sense of intimidation, and that's just kind of hard for the character to work in that way.
Yes, but I do think it really is indicative of their desperation. They've gone 100 odd years without seeking out Davros, and now they are desperate enough to get to him. I kind of like the fact that these Daleks are desperate. It makes them feel a bit more dangerous, in my opinion. But we can agree to disagree, Riley.
Yeah, sure. I find the relationship between Davros and the Daleks, just as I alluded to in my, or just clearly stated in the short summary, it's such a strange relationship. It's like they need each other, but they hate each other.
Yeah.
But then they also want to one-up each other. It's like, what are we doing here? Can we get some sort of something straight? I mean, for Davros and the Daleks, which are a person and a group of beings that seem so focused on having one united idea of doing one thing and to hell with everything else, might makes right. They seem really to have a very complicated relationship between the two of them. You think it'd be just straightforward. Okay, kill him. All right, we're not changing our mind on that. We're always going to try to kill him, and that's it. But it seems to go back all over the place. They should just kiss.
Oh my God, that's so crazy, because I was just about to say, I feel the same way about Davros that you feel about the Master. And the Anthony Ainley master. And it seems like you feel the same way about Davros as I feel about the master. Just kiss already. Davros, I don't like him.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, his little wheelchair that he's got, his little mobility, he's basically just half Dalek. And so why do we need this in between? I guess for the history of it to give ourselves a story, but that was handled with Genesis and all that. We don't need to keep going back.
And the way that he communicates is like those toys where you talk into the toy and then it repeats at you. And it's like those dancing cactuses where it shouts everything that it says back at you through a weird filter. Like you mentioned in your summary, if he didn't go from 0 to way too many decibels, I might be able to deal with him more.
Right.
But he spends so much of his time shouting.
Right. He just gets very happy when he gets to do that.
Oh,
He does. And Diana, don't yuck someone else's yum.
hey, look, if it works for other people, that's great. But I just want him to shout a bit less.
It certainly works for Davros.
While we're on the topic of Davros, his reaction to hearing that the Daleks were thoroughly defeated by the Mo villains is got to be a clear top 10 Who reaction gif if I've ever saw one. It was hilarious. I need to make it, and I'm just going to drop it on the Discord like every 5 minutes.
No, please don't. I hated that noise. Oh. It sounded like he was going to choke on his wailing. Ugh.
Yeah, that very audible choking noise.
I did like the part with Davros when the mechanical engineer was in there and he shocked him.
Mm-hmm.
I did enjoy that little bit of unnecessary humor, but it was very necessary for me.
So, note on the engineer. That's Leslie Grantham, who later became really famous for EastEnders. And I went to school with 2 of his sons. One was the year above me, one was the year below me. And occasionally saw him at parents' events, the ones they allowed the kids to come to as well. He was quite famous. He was in like over 500 episodes of EastEnders.
Oh, wow.
That's my little irrelevance here.
Now, if it had been Z-Cars, I would have been more impressed.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's too young to have been in Z-Cars. I know. Not everyone can be in Z-Cars, Julie.
Fine. Everything is fine. Are we going to talk about the Doctor and Tegan and all that?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Well, first off, I'm still obsessed with Tegan's outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Still absolutely obsessed. And I feel like they sidelined Tegan.
Mm-hmm.
And then when did Turlo just all of a sudden appear on that ship? Because I completely missed that actual thing happening.
I did too. I had to look it up. Somehow he stumbled through the time corridor, and that's how he got there.
Yep, that's basically what happens.
Cool. They could have showed anything remotely like, oh, hey, where am I type of anything.
And you say that Tegan got sidelined, and she did. Not that I wanted him to necessarily do more, but Turlo kind of gets sidelined too, because how much of that first part was just him meandering around.
Yes.
Just basically doing the Travolta gif of like, do I go over there? Over there? I don't know.
I don't like how they handled the companions, to be perfectly frank. And that's one of the issues I had. I actually feel like the Doctor himself had a good role and did quite a lot of things and some pretty decent things, but then you just sidelined all your companions.
Well, but here's the thing. They each kind of get paired up with someone. So you have Turlo being paired up with Mercer, and you have Tegan being paired up with Professor Laird. I really like Mercer.
Yeah.
I like Mercer.
Professor Laird is very bland.
Yes.
But she's the character that looks after Tegan, so clearly Tegan grows an attachment to her, which means her death is then one of the catalysts in Tegan's decision at the end of the story.
You took a lot more out of that than I did.
Yeah, I also saw this story for the first time about 30 years ago, so I've had a lot more time to ponder it.
Yeah. Let's discuss the strangeness of the Doctor being handled a pistol and just searching around a warehouse, looking around the floor, trying to find a Dalek outside of its tank body to shoot. That's just always weird looking to see the Doctor firing a pistol and holding one. And man, he unloaded on that thing.
He shot the shit out of that Dalek. And I am immediately out of it. Because anytime, like, I get that it's the Daleks. I get that this is the one where the Doctor loses his shit and they're evil and they have to be. I get it. But the Doctor should always be concerned when a gun is put in his hands. He should never be that comfortable with a gun in his hands. And he unloaded.
Yeah. He didn't have to be asked twice on how to operate. He was like, bang, 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 bang.
I thought the version to guns was a little bit not as big of a thing in classic.
It's not. I mean, we've seen the third Doctor handle a gun. We've seen the fourth Doctor handle guns.
Yeah, but I didn't like that either.
It's all from our perspective of New Who, and
except that it's not, because my aversion from it really comes from even the establishment of One, where he's an explorer. You know, I get that One got aggressive sometimes.
I mean, his preferred weapon was a rock, but
absolutely.
Yes.
I see your point, but they've used guns before, so that's why it's not like this is something that never happened.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something, I can't remember the other ones that were referenced the other times they were doing with guns, but this one felt really weird. I think it's because in those other situations, it was probably in a case of defending oneself. And here it's like, here's a gun, just shoot at anything that moves on the floor. That's probably the Dalek. You can see how the tone is different with it then.
Well, to be fair, he didn't shoot the cat.
Yeah, which, this...
I would have been
Is this
so
the
mad.
first Doctor Who episode with a live cat in it? I think it is. I don't remember seeing a live cat in any other episode up until now.
We had one in The Demons at the very beginning.
Oh, right.
And in Planet of Giants.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh, yes,
yeah. Okay. Well, this, of course, gave this Resurrection of the Daleks just gained 1 point off of that.
Especially because we're coming off of where, I wish there had been another way, where everybody's dead around him. And then he just grabs a gun and pops a cap in the Dalek's ass. There's that disjunct and that disconnect between what has literally pretty much just happened and being regretful about all of the death around him. But the second you put a gun in his hand, he's Grand Theft Auto.
That's pretty funny.
Grand Theft Auto, I love that.
I love the contrast you've pointed out there. It's like, all this senseless violence. Quick, give me that gun.
Yeah. That was pretty much one of my big issues with 5 through this whole story, was that I thought, aren't we just reflecting on violence? Why is this not shaking you up more? How is that not a part of how you're playing these scenes?
Okay, I said I'd address this later. I'm going to skip ahead to the very end here because I think it's relevant to where we are in this discussion.
Sure.
I think that's absolutely the point this story's trying to tell. We get this absolute fucking fest of violence, and most of the audience is cheering it on because it's action-packed. And then we're brought right back down to the earth at the end when Tegan says, I can't deal with this. This is too much. This is not what I signed on for. Peace out. And you have the Doctor saying, oh shit, I need to change my ways. I think that's exactly the point this story is trying to tell. It gets the audience cheering it on and then says, you're an idiot for cheering this shit on. It's cutting.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
And that did save it for me. That's one of the reasons I don't dislike this episode, is because they bring it around at the end.
Yeah. I really like what they do with it.
I guess the issue there is that for that effect that you've described, Anthony, for it to really be cutting onto the viewer, they had to withhold any foreshadowing of that perception being switched.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, because it needed that punch at the end.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, I can go with that.
To me, it's a smack in the fucking face. And I think it's brilliant for it.
Yeah. And maybe what would have been even better is at the end, instead of her just saying all this death, she should have looked at him and said, there should have been another way, and then walked away.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about this is he takes responsibility for his actions, because he basically says, I need to change my ways. Whereas in Warriors of the Deep, it was, there should have been another way. Here he's saying, I need to change my ways. I did this. And again, I think that's so effective.
Yeah.
Except that I think he was far more horrified in There Should Have Been Another Way.
Yes.
And not as horrified in his own actions.
Right. This time it's more like, oh, dang, I'll get it next time.
Right. Like, he's horrified when his inaction causes death, but he's like, oh, well, probably need to do that differently next time, when his own actions cause death.
And it's only when Tegan comments on it and leaves that he's like, oh, I need to change my ways.
Yeah. I have some things to say about the Tegan departure, but we'll save that for the end, where it was. Part 1 has the reveal of Stein being the Dalek agent to the Doctor, and I don't know what the hell they were thinking directorially with that slow motion on Davison's reaction was a very weird and silly and strange choice. It reminded me of that very famous Italian Spider-Man gif of like the hippie guy going, no, in slow motion. That's what it reminded me of. It was just a bad call, and which was strange because it must have been one of those forced cuts that you were talking about, since they didn't know what the hell they were doing in regards to 4 episodes, 2 episodes, because in the recap, it's gone. It's just not there. They just go normal speed.
I think that's absolutely what's happened. It sucks, but it is what it is.
Just cut to black next time. Just make it normal speed and just cut to black. That's nice and dramatic.
Let's do what we've been doing the last few stories. Crash zoom on Davidson's face. All right, part 2.
I think this is where the part of the serial that happens in even good serials where we get that lull. And it's always around like the 3/4 mark. And because I'm looking over in my notes, my first thing was, why did they shoot the guy that was, for some reason, in the river with a metal detector? But it was very difficult for him to use a metal detector because it looked like he was right next to a metal grate. So that would have thrown off the metal detector. Like, just why did you shoot that guy?
Because they're assholes.
I guess. You could have just leaned over and saw Tegan below you.
Yeah, the death of the mudlarker was my least favorite part. Don't kill the little nerd. He's not harming anybody.
Yeah, he's just looking for possibly Roman coins.
Right? He's just excited about a pin. Like, leave him alone.
Yeah. Well, overall, this is no less brutal. I do like Professor Laird offering Colonel Archer some tea, and she was just going to throw in a bunch of, I don't know what she had, some kind of sedative. That was her one badass moment, and she didn't get it.
Yeah, well, it was, first off, there were like several instances of tea because you British people and your obsessive nature of tea will make everything better.
It will.
Hot dishwater.
You're both fired. Diana, you can stay. I'm going to call Alan, and I haven't figured out who else.
I do actually drink tea.
Okay.
I don't hate tea. I just find it interesting that you think it solves problems. It doesn't solve problems. Anyway.
It definitely solves problems.
I also noticed the other really random things. And shortly after the Tegan incident, you then see a close-up after Davidson has his head thrown back, and he has a lot of cavities, guys.
Oh.
Lots of metal going up all in there. That was a weird thing that I noticed. That means absolutely nothing because that's what I do.
I do want to talk about the Doctor's duplication.
Oh, yes.
Ideally, I love the concept. We're going to duplicate you and your companions, and we're going to send you to Gallifrey where you'll assassinate the High Council.
Oh, no, please don't. Stop.
I know, right? I'm like, do it.
Great plan, Daleks. Actually, great plan. 100% behind that. However, how did they already have Tegan and Turlough duplicated? Because they clearly haven't been through this process the Doctor's about to go through. And yet, their duplicates are in the cabinet already.
I had that question.
I think the whole human duplication process that the Daleks have was left completely wide open. That I felt deserved to be explained to us in the audience, but they did not.
I can maybe headcanon that they can create a vessel for the duplicate from pictures and video footage, but maybe to then make them have the personality of the original, they need to scan them, and that's what they were doing with the Doctor. That's the best I've got to headcanon that.
Mm-hmm. But Mark Strickson was killing it in that cubby with his eyes wide open. He looked terrifying.
Mark Strickson, I actually thought was really good this story again.
Mm-hmm.
Again.
Yeah.
I'm definitely on board with Turlough at this point.
Okay. I didn't say I was on board with Turlough. I just said that Mark Strickson was good. Those are two different things.
I think Turlough's solid in this too.
Okay.
I think he's solid in the sense that at the heart of it, Turlough's character is very selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He's very self-centered. He's very much looking out for numero uno. And I saw more humanity from him this time and more empathy. But I actually really appreciated that he was back to being like, okay, no, fuck them. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because he also did stand up and was more aggressive and was putting his own self at risk more, but it was still very centered in, I need to get back to the TARDIS.
Yeah. There's also very much some pragmatism in him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mercer's ready to just be like, let's just storm in there and just get him, and Turlough's like, dude, you're gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be smart about this. His self-interest, yes, it does come from that, but his pragmatism helps people in this too. So ultimately, a lot goes on here, but I actually think the second part is relatively simple. Davros wants to re-engineer the Daleks in his image. The Daleks just want to use him. Eventual face down between them. Everyone dies. And Stein blows up the ship and we all go home. Except Tegan literally goes home.
So many deaths, man.
Yeah, and I pointed out in my short summary, I thought that it was a bit convenient and annoying, the flip-flopping of Stein with his conditioning. I know that it is basically written as magic. We're not given a pseudoscientific or scientific explanation of how it works or how the conditioning works, but it would be a little bit more helpful to the audience for me to buy in if I know that you're just, as the writer, not just switching him on or off at whatever time is convenient for you in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I also don't like the story mechanic of a self-destruct button.
Mm.
It's as off-putting to me as mind reading is for Julie and mind control. Like, at least we didn't get like a countdown on the self-destruct, because that's even worse, because I thought they were going to do that from the top of the first episode, and I was going to be really pissed off. The second they mentioned it, I was like, oh, this better not be a countdown for the rest of the story, because I don't like the false sense of pressure that puts on the story, because we all know it's going to be disarmed.
Yep.
So I liked this one better as a button and not knowing who was going to push the button, but I still don't like a self-destruct mechanic as your story closer.
Yeah, I do appreciate that it's Stein that gets to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he finally comes good and sacrifices himself. There are some characters that we haven't talked about that I want to. I love Styles. She is outstanding.
First, I thought she was like a medic, and then she turns out to just be a jack of all trades and does everything because she's a very competent woman. Okay, yes.
Yes, love Styles.
No, I hated her.
Really?
Yeah, I hated her. My first, and she came on the screen and I said, fuck this white bitch.
Wow.
I could not stand her from the second she was on screen. Just push everything under the rug so that I can get a good review. Fuck off.
Wow. All right.
Tell me how you really feel, Diana.
Oh, I hated her.
I liked Osborne, and I was confused with the balance. I know the captain died, I believe, off screen. So Mercer somehow was in charge, but I don't know how he got that after being the new person. Osborne seemed very much capable. And then I thought it was very strange that Mercer, who seemed to be acting in charge because he was giving orders Osborne, gives her the huge responsibility, the ultimate responsibility of just taking out Davros if they feel like they can't hold off this siege anymore. And I said, well, shit, man, if you're the freaking leader, it should be you. You don't hand off that to somebody else. But I mean, she did a good job. And she was right. I would have liked to have seen her more on the serial, but alas, another dead person.
Yeah. I mean, everyone dies.
There was, in the middle, a big scourge of people dying from sudden onset necrosis.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In episode 1 with the gas that they use in the battles.
They got all melty.
Yeah.
I had no context for where the necrosis came from.
Mm-hmm.
So you see in the opening battle, when the Daleks initially come in and the space station's guys get them, like they mine the corridor and they take out a couple of Daleks, at which point Lytton's like, we need to do this by my plan. And you see a couple of the troopers then run in with these gas canisters. And it's the gas canisters. You then see a couple of people with their faces melting in the battle. And then they're later put in that room where Turlough finds them. That's kind of how they appeared.
I love when you have to do a lot of explanation of things.
I mean, it's all there. There's just so much going on in this.
Oh, it's all there.
It's all there.
It is all there. Watch it again. It's all there.
Okay, all right.
You just have to put a couple of the pieces together.
They did crash zoom in on Melty Face Man.
Yeah.
So I did see him, but then the other guy's necrosis just seemed different. So I was like, what is this?
Which, strangely, those were not the most disgusting things that happened in this serial.
No, it's sure not.
Was it the Daleks and Davros coming absolutely everywhere?
Oh, please stop.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Okay.
Wow.
I was worried that my joke regarding that fell flat, and I'm glad we're laughing now.
It did elicit full body horror.
I was like, out of all the times we've seen people dying or aliens dying on this show recently, and they ooze green or some other fuchsia. I'm like, white? Why did it have to be white? Why now? Couldn't we have just gone back to the green?
Yeah, just dropped a little bit of food coloring in.
I mean, that's it.
You know?
Yeah. I do like, now that we're pretty much at the end of it here, I did enjoy I find it a cute little ending that we have Dalek sleeper agents on Earth, because there they go, Lytton and his two little buddies, there to be police officers for
yes,
how long, I don't know, until the Daleks decide to show up again.
3 random police officers are very strategic.
Very strategic. Daleks are going to nail down the traffic and one intersection of London.
Are they Dalek agents, though? We will see Lytton again, and it's relatively soon.
Does he deserve to come back, though? Did he make that type of impression? I don't know.
Oh, I thought, yes. I think if the Daleks had listened to them, they would have won.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also not really Dalek plants. They're Dalek refugees, kind of.
Yeah, Lytton's a mercenary.
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling me he's getting paid, then?
I think he's going to get something he wants out of all of this, or that was how he was thinking.
Is he not a duplicate?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's not made clear in this story, but he's not. That is something that's missing, but he's not a duplicate. He is meant to be a mercenary. What the Daleks were saying was they had allegedly duplicated some world leaders, but the Doctor says, that's not going to work. They're unstable, just like Stein. And then we never hear about it again, presumably because they all destabilize before they can do anything.
I think a lot of world leaders have been unstable.
Oh, are we seeing Dalek plants?
Yeah,
destabilizing?
Probably. It would make a lot of things make a lot more sense.
It would indeed. It would indeed. Well, do we want to touch on Tegan's departure? I know we already sort of did.
Well, yeah, we have to cover that. I do want to backtrack just a little bit. I wanted to point out that I found the scenes with Davros in part 1 where Lytton is trying to get him like, no, you got to come to the ship. He's like, no, I don't want to go to the ship. That's an important lesson there about dealing with elderly parents or grandparents. It may be very difficult to get them to accept that they need to go with you.
Damn, Riley.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see that scene any other way.
And also, before we fully get to Tegan, because this will lead into it, getting back to the fact that everybody dies and the fact that we are coming out of this relatively recent story where the Doctor wishes there had been another way. He also kills everyone the same way he killed everybody in that story, which was with toxic gas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of also why, as we deal with the ramifications of that and Tegan deciding to leave, that I was disappointed in the Doctor, but I was very proud of Tegan. Because we've been saying for so long, Tegan needs to get out of there. She's clearly not having a good time. And she's finally recognized that. But I think part of that is having stood there around all of the dead after the Doctor had gassed them with the Silurians. And now she's doing the exact same thing again. But now the Doctor doesn't seem sad.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the fact that this is, for some reason, he's changed a lot in a pretty short amount of time for no real apparent reason.
Yeah, I see that.
I'm going to miss Tegan.
Mm-hmm.
No, for sure.
It was rough to start, and fair enough to her. She was having a tough time because she just wanted to go to a job interview, and then she got stuck dealing with this, and then stuck out of all the doctors we've seen with like the rudest and the most curt doctor. So it was tough for her, and so it's good that she got out, but I will miss her. And now we're stuck with fucking Turlo.
Minor spoiler, not for much longer. Not for much longer. We're going to clean house very soon. All right. Running metrics. Jelly babies, none. Quarries, none. I'll explain later. Did anyone catch any?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Camp count. I did have something to add to this. Obviously, the Daleks spunking everywhere probably deserve some points.
I'd also say, let's be honest, some of the deaths of these people, they were like arm flailing everywhere.
Yeah, that deserves some camp count points.
Yeah,
for
that's fair.
Sure.
And just Davros in general.
Mm-hmm.
When he died with just one arm up in the air, because the actor's other arm is probably using it to control the chair, so he just sticks one arm out in the air, and he apparently like stuck that way.
I mean, we don't want to contemplate what else that other arm could be doing.
No, don't go there, please.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
Now we understand those scenes where he gets really excited and shouty at the very end.
No.
So what are we doing? 4 on the camp count?
That sounds fine, yes.
All right. And rating this. Riley, you get to go first.
I understand the Daleks are extremely popular, so they need to be on the show every now and then, but I find Dalek serials are more often misses rather than hits, so I don't really look forward to them. In this case, I did enjoy most of the direction, with the exception of that Davison slow-mo reaction shot, but I didn't really care much for the story. This doesn't really add anything to the Daleks or Davros. It felt more like one of those situations. I think we've made this, I believe it would be an analogy or metaphor. I'm bad at these things. Where it felt more like they were toys to be taken down off the shelf to be played with for a little bit, but nothing really changed with them, and then you put them right back on the shelf. The only thing of note here to me, of course, was Tegan's departure, but after her previous departure from the show, I am not certain whether or not this is a real departure of the character. I do think it is.
It is.
But compared to what happened before, I feel like because of that, part of me felt a bit of the emotion was taken out of it for me because I was just a little unsure. I'm like, they're not going to do it twice and have her come back, but maybe, I don't know. So it kind of removed a little bit of that pull there. So I have seen better Dalek serials and I've seen worse Dalek serials, and this one is just an average Dalek serial. I give it 6 Daleks desperately craving a cigarette out of 10.
And Riley, I'll say, you think it doesn't add anything to the Daleks and Davros, but wait and see.
All right.
Diana, you're next.
While I clearly had a lot of issues with several things in this story, it was one of those that breaks apart if you think about it too hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I really did enjoy watching it. I definitely felt the lulls. In fact, I would check the timestamp, and every time it would be where it would be a natural end for a regular episode. So I definitely felt those lulls throughout the story. And I don't necessarily like the characterization of the Doctor, and I usually can do without Davros. But I did think that this was a stronger story in the sense of the Daleks' plan actually making sense and being practical reasons why the Daleks need to be doing what they're doing. And I liked the desperation of them finally working with humans, really, and having to search back out Davros to solve their problems. So I get why he's in the story. I just don't super enjoy him. If he just shouted less, it would be fine. And so for the majority, I really liked this story. I just wish that they had edited it down a little bit. You know, take one thing off before you leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, it was still fun. And so I gave it 7 out of 10 Dalek-themed car washes because I don't have a dirty mind.
Well, I'm next, and I am going to defend where my mind goes to when I see white foam spurting everywhere. Sorry to put that so graphically, but that's what happens.
You want to defend that?
Sure.
Okay.
I thought this was fun. A lot of what Diana said, I completely agree with. This does have a lot of set pieces that have just been tied together. I will say that is kind of questionable, but in the context of this story, it kind of works. And I enjoy the action-packed nature. And as I said, that ending with Tegan saying, I'm fed up of the violence and people dying, and those aren't her exact words, I'm paraphrasing, after we've effectively been thrilled and exhilarated by extreme violence by Doctor Who standards. It's a really powerful message, and I think it works really well. We didn't touch a huge amount on the Doctor deciding that he has to kill Davros, but I think it's a really fascinating plot point that he couldn't do it as the 4th Doctor, and yet the 5th Doctor, the one who's meant to be the mild-mannered one, who's based on a fucking vet, and veterinarian, not veteran when I say that, is the one who's like, I'm going to take this gun and kill Davros. And he doesn't quite get to do it. But I think that's such an interesting thing to do with the 5th Doctor. And I really like it. Otherwise, enjoyable. Watched this plenty of times over the years. It's not one of my favorites, but it's always a good piece of action to watch. So I am 7 out of 10 face-melting prison guards. And then last but very much not least, Julie.
Okay. Well, I didn't exactly enjoy myself on this one. I think it needed some editing. I think the plot holes were there. I personally didn't like all of the direction. I thought it was poorly edited. And yes, I understand that they went from the 4-parter to a 2-parter and everything, but I had some issues there. I don't like how they use the companions because they essentially sidelined them for so long in the story. And apparently I couldn't get past that as much as some of the rest of you were able to. That's fine. So I'm only going to give it 5.5. Honestly, I wasn't paying attention to you guys. So did we say Dalek helmets? Because Dalek helmets out of 10.
Those Dalek helmets do bring a whole new meaning to dickheads.
Yeah, they do.
Well, that gives us a story average of 6.38, which is still the second highest so far this season. So, yeah, not great, not terrible. It's 3.4 Ronkins. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode, and we will be back next time when we're going to find out actually quite a lot about Turlough's background in Planet of Fire. But in the meantime, as always, thank you so very much for listening, and until next time, have a good one. You have been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Diana Burney, Riley Schreck, Julie Philippek, and myself, Anthony Williams. This episode, Don't Yuck Davros' Yum, was recorded on Monday the 12th of January 2026. If this is your first time listening into the show, all of our previous episodes are available wherever you like to get your podcasts. You can interact with us on Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, by email at watchers4d@gmail.com, and on our Discord server, and a link to that is in the show blurb. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and consider leaving us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting app. All of those things really do help the show. And always remember to not forget about Leela, or you'll make Riley quite cross.